Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. Welcome to Unscripted with Russo, everybody. I'm Ashley Russo, and I'm being joined today by the Chief Executive Officer at the Boys and Girls Club of Bethlehem, Winston Alozie. Winston, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we have had the opportunity to get to know you a little bit, and we wanted to make sure that a bigger audience in the Lehigh Valley got to know you as well. Of course, you have an amazing story and you're doing amazing things here in the Lehigh Valley, but I want to start at the beginning about where you grew up and when you moved to the Lehigh Valley.
Oh, okay. So I can do that. So my parents are immigrants from Nigeria, and they came to the United States for educational purposes, and they met in the South. And so I'm the oldest of five, and I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, the heart of Caddo Parish, and born and raised the majority of my childhood there. And then the winter of the year 2000, I was 13. The winter of the year 2000, my dad was like, I found this place. I want to do this business venture. We're moving to Bethlehem. And I remember it clear as day. We were like, why are we going to Jesus? I don't understand. That's weird.
That is too funny.
Oh my goodness. We were confused, but we moved here in the middle of like a snowstorm, like all throughout the East Coast. It was a family road trip at that. And we came to a place that was, different in so many ways.
Well, I want to talk about those cultures sort of colliding, because I'm really interested in the idea that you grew up with Nigerian immigrant parents. And that has its own unique, beautiful culture, food, traditions. And then you move to a place like Louisiana, and they moved to a place like Louisiana, which has its own food, culture, traditions. And of course, all places have that to a certain extent. But I think when you talk about something like someplace like Nigeria and someplace like Louisiana, those are strong cultures going on. Right. How did that influence your childhood? I mean, you're the oldest child of five. What sort of traditions did you have? How did it influence, kind of your upbringing?
So great question. It's hard because I don't like to talk about myself, but those things did really shape me in how I think, process, do a lot of stuff. Faith was a big thing in our family, just from where my parents came from and where we lived. That was just a big thing. We went to church, we prayed at home, things like that. But more importantly, because of where I lived and where I went to school, I did not go to the school that my neighborhood was districted to. And that always had me feeling like an outsider. So I always say that my whole life has been me trying to find a space where I can feel like the normal person or the person who belongs. Because having two parents that speak very good English, college educated, but had very noticeable accents, eating different food at home, listening to different music at home, learning different turns of phrases at home. I remember like my parents, like growing up, we didn't say fridge, we said refrigerator, we said the whole word out. And I just remember in elementary school, kids look at me like, why do you keep saying the whole word? Like no one does that. And even going back to kindergarten, I still had some of the speech patterns of my parents. So a lot of my growing up was learning how to acclimate to whatever culture I was in, trying not to be as noticeable, but at the same token, a lot of those things that drew me, like in Louisiana culture, Mardi Gras, food, things that were big and in your face, like I really like that stuff. So as much as I tried to be a background person in my mind, I've always found myself like stepping out to the front, because those things in my cultural background, in my ethnic background, have lended to being like that.
It really is an interesting converging of so many things. And I like how something like the word refrigerator would stick out to you as a kid, because it seems small, but those things in our childhood really do stick with us, especially when we feel different. Was there a point that you embraced the differences? Was there a time where you said, you know what, I've kind of got something cool going on that not everybody has? And if so, when did that sort of start to form for you?
So it took a long time to get to that point. And I would say it was a progressive timeline. But I can clearly say that the epiphanal moment that it's okay to not be one of the milieu, one of the regular, was when we moved to Pennsylvania. When I came to Bethlehem and we moved right to South Side, and I lived in an area where there were still Hungarian and Polish and Portuguese and so many Hispanic families. And seeing, like my neighbors who were from Puerto Rico had no qualms and were not embarrassed about their accents, and were not embarrassed about their ethnic food, and eating pierogies for the first time, and learning to say pierogies, because if you're not from here, pierogies does not look like it's pronounced the way it's pronounced.
And isn't it such a delicious food?
Oh, listen, girl.
I did not have pierogies until I was an adult because of my mother-in-law, who has some Russian background on my husband's side, and I'm Italian, we didn't grow up with pierogies. They're just delicious. But yeah, it's fascinating, and many people have mentioned on this podcast how unique the Lehigh Valley is for embracing diversity in so many ways. And I love to hear that was your experience coming here, and that was sort of a pivotal moment of when you felt like you could be more authentically you.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, like, just for example, with my parents coming from Africa, living down south, there were some folks who didn't want to hear that. We were often made fun of for that. Oh, your parents have accents. Oh, your last name is blah, 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 blah. And to come here, like, I really did feel liberated to be able to say, yes, my parents are not from here. My parents are from Nigeria. And, I'm okay with that because your parents are not from here. And so that was great. I will say on the converse, though, moving to Pennsylvania is when I realized that not everybody's comfortable with Black people. So that was a totally different timeline of trying to figure out life and stuff like that. But we can talk about that later.
Well, I mean, it's super interesting. And I think that it's so formative in who you are and who you've become. Tell me a little bit about what kind of kid you were. I'm the oldest child as well. So I feel like that's often a unique perspective, right? Because a lot of responsibility. I see you, I feel you, but a lot of responsibility thrust on us, right? From a young age. And what were you involved in? Like, were you an academic kid? Were you sports? Were you music? What was your thing?
I was definitely academic and music and theater. And just from the time I was a kid, I've always enjoyed music. I've always enjoyed singing. I can remember being in ECE, what we called preschool or pre-K in Shreveport. And we went to music class every day, and this woman sat at the piano and we just sang nursery rhymes. And I can remember, for the longest time, my favorite song was London Bridge, being 5 years old in the bath singing that. So music has always been a driving factor in my life. I love to listen. I love to experience. I love to be part of, and I've learned that I love to make it. So,
and music is still part of your life currently, right?
Oh yes, very much so. I'm the minister of music at my church, at St. John AME Zion Church, and I've done that now for 10 years. But since I've been in Bethlehem, I've been in the choir just about every year of my life, starting from Brockville Middle School, Freedom High School, all 4 years. I did the theater company at Freedom, and I love those experiences. I did a couple plays at Touchstone Theater. I love the expressive arts. I doodle every now and again, but I love those things. And I love being in an atmosphere that's really been supportive and embracing of that. And, as the oldest of five, we all had, and I won't say, it wasn't conscious, but we all found our niche and had to carve our own niche. So I was the oldest, which meant I was sometimes parent number 3 when my mom and dad were at work. And my sister, Christine, who was 2 years younger than I, she also filled in that role as I got older and started to transition out of the house and getting ready for college and working and stuff like that. But that was really my thing. Hey, mom and dad said, make sure your bed is made and the laundry's done. And so I was the enforcer at home.
Yeah, there's a strong sense of responsibility, I think, especially oldest children of big families. I only have 2 kids, and I don't see that same sort of level with my oldest because there's just 2 of them, as I felt, at least in my family structure. But I'm kind of grateful for that. I feel like in a lot of ways it taught me a lot of good time management skills and, hard work, and I don't know, just things. Is there anything you feel like you picked up that you've carried on into your adult life that you learned in particular in your family?
Definitely. I think more so being goal driven or task, there's a goal in the distance. We need to be able to meet it. And so, yes, I'm working towards that goal. And being cause or loyal to a cause. because of, I think, where I lined up in my family, I'm still very much, my siblings see me as like the family griot. I'm telling all the stories and remembering the histories and things of that nature. And so I think because I was made to, hey, you need to pay attention, because if your mom is here or your dad's not here, you got to be able to do. So those things still are very much even in my administrative part of my job, just about everything that I do or my hand touches, those same skills of, hey, pay attention because you're probably going to have to figure this out at some point, still come into play. And the, hey, somebody's going to have to talk about it, be ready. And even just being the child of immigrants. Again, my parents spoke English very well, both have college degrees. My mother has a master's in business, but we're conscious about their accents. So a lot of times, even just answering the phone, my phone voice was picked up from being the oldest and, hey, you're going to have to do this. And just shaped in that way. So all of those things, little mundane things, even like how I take out the trash. I go through that with my boys at home. This is how you do it, and this is why you do it. And it all comes from how I was raised.
I love that though. And it's so important that you've carried it forward and you're continuing that with your own children. I love that. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to sort of hear about the next chapter of your life, the trajectory to education and your career path that led you to the Boys and Girls Club of Bethlehem. So stick with us, everybody. You're listening to Unscripted with Russo. As a mother of two, I know it can be tough to find activities that everyone will enjoy. Luckily, the Lehigh Valley has so many ways to treat your family without breaking the bank. You can experience cool discoveries at the Da Vinci Science Center or all aboard the WKNS railroad train for an afternoon adventure. There's fun around every corner of the Lehigh Valley, and you can uncover it all on Discover Lehigh Valley's website. Visit discoverlehighvalley.com for more information. Welcome back to Unscripted with Russo. I am being joined with my friend Winston Alozie. Winston is the CEO at the Boys and Girls Club of Bethlehem. Winston, it's been so great chatting with you already, and just getting the beginnings of your story are so rich, and the history and the various cultures that you had kind of converging into your upbringing. I'm just amazed by, and I think it's cool that you've had some time to reflect on what that has meant and what it's brought to you. How do you keep the traditions that you were raised with, Nigerian, from Louisiana growing up, now into Bethlehem, going in your own family? Like, what role has that played as you've built your own family?
So I am married to a wonderful lady, Robin, maiden name Hemmons, who grew up here in Bethlehem. And one of the things that we do is keeping those traditions alive from both of our families. And for me, it allows for those parts of my family and those people who adopted us to be part of our family or their families. Because with my parents moving here and us living down south, my dad has siblings that live in this region, which is why we ended up moving this way, so we weren't so far from everyone. But particularly when we were down south, we didn't have cousins that we could run around and play with. So we were adopted by so many people as extensions of their family. And then moving here to Bethlehem, again, being the new people and not from the valley, not from the place, we first time I'd ever seen a row house, just little things like that. Being new, we were embraced and we were adopted. So for me, keeping those traditions is more than just doing that task, but it's keeping alive the memory, the promises, the hope, the love that those folks who welcomed us have done so. And then within my own family, just keeping those things alive, because I do feel that they were important, that they helped shape us to who we are. Again, the oldest of five, I'm a nonprofit director. My sister's a clinical therapist. My one brother does construction. My other brother, he is an investment banker. My little sister, she's in college getting her social work degree. And I'm grateful for the opportunities that we've had to get where we are. And it's because of the traditions of faith, of honesty, of hard work and dedication that our parents instilled in us. I want to make sure that those things continue because they allowed me to get where I'm at today. And as long as my kids don't forget that, both at work and in my personal home, I feel like I've done my job.
Oh, so beautifully said. And it really leads me to get to how you got to this career, because you went to the Boys and Girls Club, correct, as a kid?
Correct.
So what
Correct.
kind of impact did that have on you when you were deciding? Now you said education was really important. So I assume it was a fairly foregone conclusion that you would go to college.
There
And
was no doubt in my parents' mind that that was happening.
yeah,
Um,
so how did you kind of narrow in on your career choice? What did you study and what influence did the Boys and Girls Club have on that decision?
if you ask my father that question, the Boys and Girls Club ruined his child.
Oh,
From the time I was 7, my father had made up his mind that I was going to be a doctor.
no.
I did pretty decently in school, and as a kid, I had a very masterful sense of vocabulary. You could ask any teacher I ever had from like 1992 to 2005. Yeah, that kid, there's something working up there. He's okay. When we moved here, my brother started going to the Boys and Girls Club first. And I would pass by on my way to and from school, but I didn't really go. But it wasn't until that summer that from when we moved, so after 8th grade, that I started to get involved in their programming. And then during my freshman year of high school, I started going after school and I had a blast. I tell you that part of the story to say that when I had to get my high school community service hours, it was just natural to do it at the club. And those experiences of doing community service led me say, oh, I like this. Now, I told you what my dad wanted me to do, but I know that I wanted to be a teacher. And my father was like, you'll never make any money. You're wasting your intelligence, blah, 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 blah. Please don't be upset. School board, my wife's a teacher, she's a principal now, love education. Those were some of the things that he thought. And I'm so glad that I didn't listen to him. Because of my experiences through working at the club, community service, and actually working, I was a summer camp counselor. I was a program assistant all throughout high school. Those experiences, I had one student named Cameron, he's the reason why I got a degree in psychology. He's the reason why I said I wanted to devote my life to working with young people, because he was such a good kid, but was so misunderstood, but also had difficulty like controlling his emotions and his reactions. And his mother and his stepfather really embraced me to be part of their family because of how like I never gave up on him. Um,
I love that
he,
you can pinpoint it to that one moment and that one child and the
yeah,
difference you felt. We spoke to Anita Palkovitz over at the Children's Home of Easton. I don't know if you've had the chance to meet Anita
know
and
of
get to
her,
know.
but we've not met yet.
Well, I have to make that connection because I'll tell you, she's been there for almost 40 years. And her story is actually quite similar in the sense that she went to school for education, ended up in social work, and found that her ability to really kind of influence and touch the life of a child by caring, because she came from a big family. So she came from an environment where she had people caring for her. And I think that there's a commonality in your story and what you're saying about the boys club that, the Boys and Girls Club, that you could care about this one child's life and become an extension of their family. And isn't that so closely aligned with the mission today?
Oh, definitely. I mean, our mission is to enable all kids, especially those who need us most, to become positive, caring, productive citizens. And for any kid, especially the ones who need us most, kids who home life is rough, or they're having a hard time fitting in, or they're the new kid to the state or to the neighborhood, to be able to embrace them and be, I can unequivocally say I'm not who I am today without me being a product of the programming here. I was embraced. I was welcomed. I was celebrated. And I never forgot that. I had people who said, dude, you're great at what you do. Do more of it. If any kid can hear that, I just know what it did for me. And I know if any kid can just hear that one time in their life, we oftentimes talk about kids, not, getting these horror stories at home. Most of our kids don't live in, they're not living with Miss Hannigan at the orphanage. Annie reference.
Love it. One of my
They're-
favorites.
See, there we go. Most of our kids aren't living with parents who don't like them or who are abusive. They're living with parents who are busy and they don't see them for days in and days out, or they're living with one parent and don't get to see the other parent. So they're living with an absence of that positive assurance, that reaffirmment, whatever the case may be. And I'm just so glad that we can do that. That's what the club did for me. That's what so many others have done for me. And I'm just glad that I get to return that favor. It's been a real blessing in my life.
what do you want people to know about the Boys and Girls Club of Bethlehem that maybe they don't know, and kind of how does that tie into your hope for the club as you move into the future? Like, what does it look like next? In some ways, there's such stability, right? It's offered something similar for a very long time. And yet, how do you evolve and keep up with where the community is, where the youth is, where families are today, and the need, as the need increases, especially we saw such a great need increase over COVID. So twofold. What is something you want people to know maybe they don't know about the Boys and Girls Club of Bethlehem? And what are your hopes for where it's headed?
So what I think I want people to know about the Boys and Girls Club is that we are not just for the downtrodden. The Boys and Girls Club is a place for every kid. For every kid. Yes, we do serve some of the most vulnerable. Yes, the majority of our kids are under the poverty line. Yes, the majority of our kids come from single parent households that don't make a lot of money and don't have a lot of opportunity, and live in substandard housing or live in housing development, which those aren't substandard, but don't own their own home and suffer, quite frankly, the effects of poverty. The club is not just for those kids. It is for any young person who wants to feel like they are part of a community and to continue to build. Because I do believe, and the club believes, that if you have that sense of community and you have that starting point, it's something that it is a propellant for you. To your second question, I think the vision or the future of the club is very similar to the vision of the past. It is to grow and enhance opportunities for kids. What the club was founded for 90 years ago, and it was founded during times like this, economic uncertainty. It was right at the collapse of Wall Street. And here in Bethlehem, it was seen that there was troubled waif. I saw an article in our archives that led to the founding of the club, and it was like waifs and delinquents and all of these words that were basically like, these kids are up to no good. And that's what people were thinking about these kids 90 years ago. And 90 years later, there are still kids who need guidance. 90 years ago, you had kids that were roaming the streets, that weren't going to school, that were getting into fights, that were violent, that were hitting each other, that were hitting others, that were robbing people. And, things that people are, when they watch the news, they're so scared. Look at the youth of today doing these things. These are some of the things, I'm gonna tell you a secret, everybody listening and watching. These are some of the things that your grandparents were doing. Kids may have tablets in their hands, but a lot hasn't changed under the sun. So I say that to say that our vision is to serve those kids. 90 years ago, we were serving Greek, Italian, Hungarian, Eastern European immigrants coming to the United States that were living in low-income housing, that were trying to scratch and survive. Today, we're serving predominantly children of color, of families who are working 2 or 3 jobs, who are the essential workers that we don't talk about during COVID, that are trying to scratch and survive. So we're still doing that same mission today, to allow a kid to see that there's something better, to allow a kid to have an opportunity to go somewhere or to experience something that they otherwise wouldn't have. That's what we do. And that's what I hope that we get to do for another 90 years.
So beautifully said, and so incredibly important. I think that stigma and the concept of what people imagine, a kid who does that is like, or what their background is, or what kind of family they're from, it's just not true. I mean, ultimately, it's just not the truth. And I challenge people to visit. I think it's really powerful when you visit a place like the Boys and Girls Club, or you visit a place like New Bethany Ministries, or a place like the Children's Home, to see really firsthand, not only what's going on and the kind of people that are being served in our community who are asking for a hand up, not a handout. Right. And I think also where the opportunity is for people to get involved. Like when you talk to the community and people who are listening, not only do we want them to know that the Boys and Girls Club is a place for them, for their children, for their grandchildren, from any walk of life, but how do you want people to get involved? How can they help support the mission of the Boys and Girls Club and the work you're doing every day?
Wow, actually, that is a great question. I think first and foremost, if people can just share the story, go to our website, go to our Facebook page, and just look at the good things that are happening with the kids, with the community members who are coming in and sharing programming and sharing time with the kids. That's first and foremost what we're looking for. And then secondly, I hate to throw this plug out there, but I'll be honest. to make sure that we have the resources to continue doing what we're doing. We serve, prior to COVID, we were serving over 900 kids a year through all of our programming, our in-house programming here in the building, our summer programming through our partnership with the city of Bethlehem at Yosco Park in South Bethlehem, the partnerships that we have had with the Bethlehem Housing Authority. And so to have those kids coming through, walking through our doors, going through our programs, there's a cost to that, right? You have to be able to support that. So if folks, can find it in any way to donate to help make sure that we keep our doors open, those things are helpful. We have 2 full-time staff members who are direct care providers to our students. We have a part-time staff person, and we're looking to make sure that we can continually provide quality programming, but that costs money. That is a cost, and I'm grateful that we get to do that, and I'm so glad that we get to do that. But there is a cost, and then the other thing, if you don't have the treasure, so to speak, time and talent, we're always looking for folks to come in and mentor, to showcase. Maybe there's a certain local broadcasting person who could possibly talk with kids on what it's like to interview.
You have me anytime you want. You tell me when I can come, and I would be happy. And so would my team. We love the opportunity to speak to kids. That's
awesome.
I mean that really and truly. I mean, I remember one of the first things I learned, and I learned it from Marcy Lesko over at United Way, whom I know you know. Marcy, shout out. When I first got involved with United Way, one of the things that I was told, and Marcy told me this, is that, kids and people only know what they know. And a lot of times kids living in poverty only know about 4 blocks. It's really small. And we can't access and sort of show what's possible if we don't introduce what's possible. And so that resonated with me so much, because it's honestly a thought I hadn't ever had. It kind of built the foundation of how I help think about how important knowledge and education is, not just school education, but education of what's possible. And you mentioned that about the concept of like supporting kids in a way where they know that they have options. Yes. And so I think that starts with meeting people who do other things. Like I even think of my own kids, like if I don't introduce them and say, hey, this is, Mrs. So-and-so who does this thing, they don't know that's a job. They don't know that's a degree. They don't know that's a thing to look for, right? Like it's funny you say about your dad saying, be a doctor. And I think that there's this short list that people have, but there's so many options out there. Like there's so much that you could do. And I love that. So that's really cool. Well, you got us, Winston. We'll figure it out.
I'm glad. I mean, I'm a kid of the 90s, and I remember junior achievement very well, but I also remember reading the Magic School Bus books. And I think those 2 experiences in my life were very life-changing, because you got to see people doing different things, and I got to read a story about kids visiting and magically seeing different bits of science. And either way, it was experiences. It was opportunity for a new experience. Every day in the Magic School Bus was a new field trip. Every season in junior achievement was a new person that was coming in and telling us about how they do their business. And that's something that I think at the club, just what you said, Ashley, is literally what I tell people all the time. If we can advance the opportunities for kids to get in those, to see that there are options, we've done them a world of good. We've expanded those 4 blocks infinitely.
Yeah. And you've got some great partners in Bethlehem, between Arts Quest, Historic Bethlehem, St. Luke's, you've got a lot of places, I think, that want to see the kids succeed and see the kids have opportunities. So we're glad to see you're such a good partner in the community. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I do want to find out why you love the Lehigh Valley and why you've chosen to stay here and make this your home. So you're listening to Unscripted with Russo. We'll be right back. There's nothing like wintertime in the Christmas city, but any time of year, Bethlehem's rich history, culture, food, and fun make it a great hangout spot. Take a walk on the artsy South Side, catch a great band at Steel Stacks, or enjoy the quaint history of Hotel Bethlehem. There are so many options, but before you book your trip, head over to Facebook and like Lehigh Valley, PA. Before you know it, you'll have a full itinerary of places you won't want to miss. Welcome back to Unscripted with Russo. I'm Ashley Russo, and I'm being joined by the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Bethlehem, Winston Alozie. Winston, it's been such a cool conversation with you. I love hearing your passion for what you do and how you serve our community at the Boys and Girls Club. This is clearly more than a job to you, clearly a calling, and you set a really good example. And you've talked a little bit about this region and what impact it had on your life. So tell me about the Lehigh Valley. Why did you choose to stay? Because you went to college, you could have gone anywhere, and here you are in the Lehigh Valley. Why?
I have chosen to stay because I love so many things about the Valley, but first and foremost, I would say I love the people. It is so nice to be able to be in a place where folks, if they don't know you, they're interested in getting to know you. So that's a beautiful thing. And I just love the opportunities that exist here for, family entertainment, for personal entertainment. I love that we're close enough to New York City that if we want to go to a show, we can drive out there and it's not going, you won't die of exhaustion in the car. I'm grateful that we have that. But for me, one of the things that speaks to me is the history of this area. I am thoroughly enthralled with the colonial history of the area, with the industrial history of this area, with the Native American history throughout this area. I love seeing and visiting the places and just finding the artifacts on my own. And then I also thoroughly enjoy just the landscape, whether I'm going out to the Lehigh and Jim Thorpe area or out driving around in Easton, Lower Saucon Township, throughout Bethlehem and Fountain Hill and all of these areas, just finding all of these little country roads and seeing the flora and fauna that exist, seeing the stone structures and just the natural escapes. Like that to me is an escape. And so that's what I love. That's what I love. My
It's
11-year-old.
funny you mentioned that because we had such an interesting family experience. I identify with everything you said. I'm only from New Jersey, an hour away, and not too dissimilar in landscape, but there's something kind of, I don't know, infectious about the Lehigh Valley. And all those things, the history is so critical. It's so in the fiber of and the fabric of this area. But my son is away at college, and his college roommate was born and raised in Houston. So if anyone's ever been to Houston, it's very hot, it's very flat, and it's very brown. And you notice it right away if you're from the Northeast, but he came up here to visit in May, like late May. Everything was blooming. And my son's driving him around, and he came home and he said to me, "Mom, Cooper keeps looking out the window, like really amazed, like totally shocked at what he's looking at. Why is he so surprised?" And I said, "Well, think about it. You've been to Houston. He's never seen this. He's never seen rolling hills. He's never seen big trees. He's never seen deer." And it is amazing how easy it is to take for granted the beauty of this area. But it was kind of fun to see someone who really had never truly experienced any part of Pennsylvania or the Northeast. Yeah, it's cool.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And that's just what I like. For me, I really enjoy seeing that. Like we went tubing on the Lehigh this summer, and that was fun just to look at that. And I think part of it too is that to tie back that these are the same things that the Lenape saw 300 years ago, right? These are the same things, that the folks that came and started to carve out little towns that they saw. And, just to be like, we're part of that same fabric in this continuum of time. It's so cool to me.
That's a really cool way to put it. Are there things that you mentioned? You have two boys.
Right. I have 4 kids.
4 kids. Oh my gosh. Okay. So 2 boys and 2 girls?
No, 3 boys and a girl. There's a 16-year-old boy, 11-year-old boy, and then 5-year-old twins. They're born.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That is a full plate. Good thing you're the oldest of 5. At least you're prepared. Are there things your kids love to do? Are there things your kids love to do in this area?
I don't even think I could list them all. They love all the little fairs that we go to. Even they love the fairs, but they also love the parks. But like I was saying before, my 11-year-old son, he likes on Sundays after church, we'll eat supper and then we'll go for a family drive. We still do that. Even with the cost of gas right now, we still do that. And he's bugging me like at 3:30 on the set, like, so where are we going? And so that's something that my kids look forward to. But they love like all the little fairs. They love walking about, South Side. We love the Spring on 4th, What's on 3rd, the Cops and Kids reading program, their spring event. our kids go every year, so just little things like that. If there's a community event, and especially there's food, we in there.
I love it. Well, this is the Lehigh Valley is a great place for community events that also include food. So you're living in the right place. Well, Winston, it's been awesome talking to you. Before I let you go, I want to do a little rapid fire. You have not heard these questions. So here we go. Are you ready? Okay. What is one food you cannot live without?
Chicken.
If you didn't have the job you have now, what would you be doing instead? Something in a totally different field.
Carpenter.
Oh, I'm going to guess that means you're pretty handy.
I am handy. I've never worked with wood, but I like building things. Well, I shouldn't say that. I fix things, but I don't be carving.
There's time to develop that one. I like it. All right. What actor would you cast to play you in a movie about your life?
Denzel Washington or Mekhi Phifer.
And what is your favorite hobby or pastime?
Drawing.
And I see you're surrounded by pictures behind you as well.
Yes, these are pictures over the years, and I'm talking about some of these go back as far as maybe 2005, 6. If a kid ever draws me a picture, it goes up wherever my office is. It goes up on a wall in my office. And so
I love that. That's fabulous. So that leads me to my last rapid fire question, which is name someone who inspires you.
Someone who inspires me. There's so many. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to say my parents, because they left the security of their families, of their siblings, of pretty decent jobs in Nigeria in the 70s and 80s to come to the United States for better opportunities. And even though things did not pan out the way that they had hoped or wanted, they are still able to strive to make sure that we as their children are doing the things that they wanted to do or living out what their dreams were. So for them to give up everything and say, we're going to try something, and they did it. That takes a lot of guts. And I don't know if I could do that. So I admire them for that.
Well, I certainly admire them for that as well. That is an incredible story. And I think they have much, much to be proud of. So Winston, thank you so much for being a part of our podcast and joining us and telling us a little bit more about your story. And we encourage people, please check out the Boys and Girls Club of Bethlehem and see how you can get involved. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Until next time, this was Unscripted.